Hello, my name is Gary Miller. I'm a research entomologist with the USDA's Systematic Entomology Laboratory. I'm standing beside one of the world's largest collections of microscope slides of aphids. Each one of these drawers contains hundreds of these slides. However, there are other arthropods that are also prepared on slides. Today I'm going to show you how to make a slide of a soft scale, family Coccidae, for examination or identification purposes. So let's go over what you will need to make a permanent microscope slide. You'll need a set of micro tools, a series of dishes for transfers, a slide centering stage, microscope slides and cover slips, your chemicals for clearing, staining, and dehydration, permanent mounting medium, in this case Canada balsam, a hot plate or warming tray, a good light source, such as this fiber optic light source, and of course a good microscope, such as this binocular microscope. Here we have a live plant sample that contains adult soft scales. You can see these soft scales are lined up on the midrib. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove one of the adult females. Here I pry under it with a fine forceps, and occasionally they'll just pop off like that. It's hard sometimes to pick them up. I'm having a hard time here. So I'm wetting the tip of the forceps in KOH, the next step. It acts like a little suction cup. Take it away. And you can also see some live crawlers on the leaf, shown here. This is a clearing step. I'm filling the dish up with 10% KOH, about halfway full or so. Here's the adult female on the forceps. Put it right in. It's always a good idea to collect a couple specimens. And then from here, what you want to do is you want to place this on a warming tray or hot plate. Make sure not to overcook it. And you can also cold soak this overnight if you have more time to allow in the clearing of it. Here I'm using a spatula. That's one of the micro tools that we have. And I'm gently pressing down on the scale body. You can see the gut contents, the fat body is coming out of the integument. You want to gently use a pumping action here. And this may take a little bit of time. And you can do this by keeping an eye on your specimen on the hot plate, removing it and doing a little bit of this at a time. Here I'm teasing again the gut contents on the integument, just pushing down the integument. Sometimes helpful to come up underneath the specimen with the spatula. For difficult cases, you may have to use two tools. I'm using a fine pair of forceps, and I'm holding the scale down and just removing the fat body and eggs. You'll notice that the specimen is starting to clear. Again, press a little bit on the specimen. Use that surface tension to your advantage by lifting it up. You'll now move the specimens back to the hot plate or let them cold soak. Here we are where after they've been on the hot plate or they've cold soaked, you'll see they're almost ghost-like. We're moving this to a double stain. This is commercially available. This contains acid fusin and lignin pink. The beauty of a double stain is you can't overstain the specimen. You'll notice there's some bubbles developing in that specimen about 12 o'clock. I'm getting a second specimen here. Again, come under the specimen with your spatula. Just move it across to the double stain. Here we are taking the last specimen out of the KOH into the double stain. You may have noticed that when you place this specimen in the double stain, you'll see this bubbling action, bubbles forming in the integument of the specimen. This is something that you really shouldn't worry about too much. It's a case where, as I'm pointing to it here, sometimes these bubbles will eventually dissipate. You can probe the specimen occasionally, and that may help, as I'm doing here. If the bubbles don't dissipate, a little extra pumping with the micro spatula. I'm doing this just gently again, a little bit at a time. And there you can see the bubble is out to the side. Our next step is the dehydration phase. During this step, we'll use 70% alcohol. Here I'm filling the dish up here. We're going to transfer the specimen from the stain to the 70% alcohol. I get under the specimen again and move it to the alcohol. Now the specimen will be filled with a staining solution inside, so you will have to move the specimen around. This is actually a little bit of, not only is it dehydrating the specimen, but you're actually destaining it slightly. The integument will still be stained, however. It also gives you a chance at this time. Sometimes there are still some internal contents, so you can still do a little bit of removing of the insides of the scale. You'll see the stain out to the side. And moving the specimen again on the bottom of the dish, moving it around. The extra stain is coming out here. You don't want to keep it in the alcohol too long. First, the alcohol could evaporate, and then you're left with a specimen stuck to the dish. If that's the case, you can put more alcohol in. And I'm using pumping action again, using the surface tension to flush out the insides. Most of the stain is out of the specimen. As you can see, the stain is along the side. You'll also see some of the embryos and eggs in the dish. Our next step is also a dehydration step. This one involves 95% alcohol. Here I'm filling up the dish. You'll see the specimen still has a little bit of stain in it. It's nearly translucent. I get under it, just remove it from the dish, and now into the 95% alcohol. And again, this gives you an opportunity to use a spatula to remove any excess stain that may be in the specimen. From 95% alcohol, we go to clove oil. Under the specimen. Sometimes you have to just sort of get under it and lift it up. Just touching the surface, you'll see the difference between the alcohol and the clove oil. The specimen will skate over the surface. And then moving it down, submerging it in the clove oil. Our next step involves clove oil to the final step, which is the balsam or the permanent mount. I'm using a small dab of balsam in a bullseye, that center point there. And this is the microscope slide mounting stage. You can move that balsam around a little bit. I have kind of crosshairs that we've put on the slide mounting stage. It's underneath that microscope slide. Because you've used that spatula in the balsam, you'll want to get another tool because it's sticky. So here we're lifting it up out of the clove oil and placing it directly in the balsam. Bring the specimen down into the balsam to that bullseye mark. Now I'm using the micro probe and just manipulating the specimen so you have it oriented correctly. And you can move the balsam out a little bit. You want to try to get nearly a flat surface because we're going to put a cover slip over top of the specimen next. This is the trickiest part, trying to place that cover slip center on the specimen with equal pressure. There I put the cover slip down, and you'll see the balsam starting to move out with the surface tension. Sometimes you'll need to get a probe again and use a little bit of pressure right on your specimen, gently tap. And so much of this is dependent upon the viscosity of the balsam. You can see the balsam now is moving underneath that slide. And gently move this down. As you can see here, my specimen is turned slightly, but it's still nearly center. So again, I'm kind of tapping that slide down or the cover slip down slightly. You'll see the balsam gradually moving under there. It's almost filled. The viscosity of this balsam, it could have been thinned maybe a little bit. And balsam can be thinned with substances such as HistoClear. That's a citrus derivative. After you're finished with your slide, you'll want to place that on a tray, and you'll want to put that in a drying oven. In this case, I probably didn't put quite enough balsam in, and what I do is I get a little bit of clove oil just on the spatula, and that will break the surface tension of the balsam and allow it to move nicely. Went right around the edge of that cover slip. Another trick, in addition to the clove oil, is also to take that microscope slide and place it on the warming tray or on a hot plate, just briefly, and that'll allow the balsam to move under the cover slip.
And there you have it.
Finally, you will want to label your slides and place them in a drying oven, such as the one we have here. We keep the temperature set at about 30 degrees centigrade. And this is important because it allows the mounting medium to set. The length of time required in the oven depends upon the thickness of the microscope slide mount. I hope this video has helped you prepare a microscope slide. And with practice and patience, you'll be well on your way to developing this important skill.